Hey there, the gameplay you are seeing in the background is from my dream game, a game that still has no name. I have been working on this game for months, pouring my heart and soul into it, and I had so much fun working on it. It was more than satisfying to see the game evolve more and more into the game of my dreams. But I did a series of major mistakes that would eventually cause several big problems. I never really planned my game before starting the development. I had a rough idea and randomly added gameplay mechanics I imagined being cool. This worked out just fine at first, but things started to crumble as time went on. The code was a giant mess, the game was not optimized at all, and I got hundreds of bugs every time I added a new feature. I tried to perform life-saving surgeries on my game, but it only got worse and worse. I eventually gave up and decided to start over. It was a very hard decision for me to do so, but this is my dream game. It only deserves the best version of itself and can't end up as a giant mess that barely holds together. Before we start with the devlog, I want to make two things clear. This time I will do my best to keep the game organized and I will only add new features and mechanics in an order that makes sense. The new version of the game will still be two-dimensional, but this time it will also be isometric. This means that the game creates the illusion of a three-dimensional environment, so you will be able to move in 4 instead of 2 directions. And now, what are we waiting for? Let's start over. First up, I had to remake the player movement, because now you can move in 4 instead of 2 directions. As you can see, I am using a new color palette and made a completely new player, with better and smoother animations. I am also using a different, simpler art style. The previous art style was cool, but I had problems making the contrast between various objects, and drawing stuff took way too long in general. I know some of you really liked the previous art style, and I hope that you will like the new one just as much. After quickly making the new player movement system, I added items and shooting. I simply grabbed both mechanics from the old project because they worked just fine. Now you can pick up a gun, shoot with it and drop it. It's just like in the old project, but I didn't add magazines and an inventory yet, because this time I want to get a playable prototype running first before adding more complex features. I also added a simple zombie enemy that chases the player to test if the shooting actually works. And yes, it worked just fine. The bullets didn't deal damage to the zombies and the zombie didn't attack the player either, but I didn't add these mechanics yet because I wanted to focus on a more important problem first. What's the problem? Sprite sorting. I am making a two-dimensional game, but I wanted to create the illusion of a three-dimensional environment. This doesn't work right away, and the solution is to sort the different sprites in the scene depending on their position. This is just as easy as it sounds like, but there is one exception where it doesn't work. Let me explain how simple sprite sorting works so you understand the problem too. Let's say we have a player and an enemy. In order to determine the order in which we have to sort these objects, we have to compare their positions on the screen. The red circles display each object's position. When we render objects with higher Y values behind objects with lower Y values, it creates the illusion of a three-dimensional world. However, this does not work in all cases. Long diagonal objects are an exception. We didn't have any long objects in the scene yet, so I quickly drew an isometric version of the caravan trailer from the old game. It looks slightly different, but also much better now. Anyway, when replacing the enemy with the caravan trailer, you will quickly see that simply comparing the positions of both objects is not enough to determine the correct order in which both objects have to be sorted anymore. Yeah, what a long sentence. Anyway, this is an issue I wanted to get rid of as fast as possible. I watched some tutorials and spent hours coding trying to find a solution, and some of my approaches worked. Mostly. There were always some random bugs that had to be fixed in order for the game to be perfect. After a while I randomly came up with a super simple idea that doesn't even require any coding. I simply treat all the long objects like multiple smaller objects, each having an as rectangular shape as possible, and now it works just fine. Another problem that appeared after placing the caravan trailer in the scene was the enemy movement. Enemies try to walk straight up to the player because they obviously can't detect obstacles in their path. Fixing this was relatively easy as I had to deal with this problem several times before. I simply imported a package called the A-Star project for Unity. A-Star is a very popular pathfinding algorithm that is used in a wide range of contexts. It calculates the perfect path between a start and destination node fairly quickly and easily. It took me less than 5 minutes to set it up, and now the zombie navigates around the trailer and doesn't get stuck anymore. Now that all the issues are fixed, we have a fairly nice foundation for our game, with all the basic gameplay mechanics that we need later. I know it might not seem like a lot to you, but it took me quite some time to figure out how everything in the new game should work out exactly. In the next part I will add much more gameplay mechanics and other content, so make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed watching. Also make sure to like, don't forget to leave some feedback in the comments and check the links in my description. Have a great day and see you very soon.